I was born in 1925, a long time ago. And it was a lot different than it is now. It was so much different that you probably would have difficulty tying the two together. In 1941, I was 16 years old, and the Japanese decided to bomb Pearl Harbor, and we were at war. We also got into the war at Europe too, because Hitler was trying to overrun the entire continent over in Europe, and he had taken everything but England, and he was trying to figure out a way to get across the channel so he could get England too. So back in those days, when you turned 18 years old, that was the law. You went up and registered at the draft board. And I was classified as 1C. Now 1A, I would have had to leave right then and there. Does anybody have any idea what 1C means? I hadn't finished high school yet. So they gave me 6 months to finish high school. And I got out in June, and I had 10 days to report to Camp Upton, Long Island, which I did. And the other thing that would surprise you, so different the way it is today, the entire male group of my graduating class, every one of the boys got on the train, went to Camp Upton, New York. We were all drafted in the Army. Now the only way you could get out of going in the Army, and I don't know if that's a good idea, would be in that 6 month period you had for your deferment, you could join the Marines or the Navy. I didn't say Air Force because Air Force at that time was part of the Army. So you could get out of going in the Army and go in the Marines or the Navy. And some of them did. But there was only one problem, which I didn't do, because after you got out of the service, then you'd have to go back to high school at whatever age you were and finish your high school. And when we went in back then, we didn't go in for a year or 2 years, or excuse me, 4 years. You went in for the duration. If the war would last 20 years, I guess we'd still be there. And it was still going on now, we'd still be there. But there was no 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, or anything. You were there. So I went down to Camp Upton, Long Island, and from there they assigned me to the artillery. If they had assigned me to the infantry, I probably wouldn't be standing up here. But I went down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for 17 weeks basic training, and I ended up on the gun crew of a 105 millimeter howitzer. That's a big cannon. I then went to Fort Meade, Maryland. Then I got 7 days to go home and say goodbye, and reported to Boston. And I went across the ocean from Boston to Falmouth, England. And I do like to bring this up because it's particularly fun. I was in the Navy for 29 days. When we got aboard the boat in Boston, I went across the ocean. You ready for this? I went across the ocean on an LST landing craft. 58 of them, they were taken over for the invasion. And I don't know if you know it or not, most people don't, on the starboard side of the front of a LST landing craft is a hospital, 25-bed hospital up there, got an operating room and the whole thing, so that after you land the invasion, then they bring the casualties back down, they can go right directly into the hospital. We occupied, there was 25 Army guys on board the boat, and we were in the Navy for it took 29 days to get across the ocean, because the top speed of an LST is 6 knots an hour. So we got over there in 29 days, and at that, I did Navy Watch, Navy KP, Navy everything. We were in the Navy, 29 days. Got to England, got some more training over in Barry, Wales, and Barnstable, England. Then we moved on over to Winchester, England, which is just outside of London. And we thought, oh boy, we get to go into London. No, we were confined. And we went on down to Southampton, got on the boats, and went across the English Channel and landed in the invasion. I want to tell you right up front, I did not land on D-Day. I was on the boats right off the beach as were a couple of thousand boats out there. And what we were doing is waiting for our turn to get in. And we finally got in on D+2. And I have a picture up here. This is my vehicle. I was delighted when I got over there that I was in the artillery, but I didn't have to dig it in because it's mounted on a tank. And this is called an M7. That's me right there. That's our M7. And we went over, landed at Utah Beach. We went up and took the port of Cherbourg. Now that was really important because we had to get the port of Cherbourg because in an invasion, you're landing thousands of troops a day, and there was probably 250, 300,000 troops on the beaches now. And you have to land ammunition, gasoline, food, and it's really hard to push them ashore on the beaches. So we wanted to port. So our orders from General Eisenhower was to go up and get the port of Cherbourg. When we pulled into Cherbourg in my beautiful vehicle, we come down to the main square of town, and it's kind of like Libertyville. You have the main square there, and then the headquarters building for the town hall, is kind of a gray stucco building, and hanging down the front of the building is the Nazi flag. And I thought, ooh, wow. And nobody had taken it. And so I kicked our tank driver, Rufus Angel, from Louisiana. And Rufus, I said, see that flag hanging over there? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's mine. He said, you got it. So can I have a little help here?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh.
There it is.
Wow.
That's the flag that was hanging Cherbourg.
Oh my goodness.
That's it. Hasn't been washed.
And you can see how big it was. Like it was hanging from
It's like a banner.
From a high banner.
Like a banner, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So that's my great souvenir. Wow. What I did was a couple weeks afterwards I took it and I folded it all up in a neat small packet, and I put it in a 50 caliber machine gun bullet box, wooden box, and then I nailed the top on, and I put my mother's address on it, and I took it down to mail it, and our captain was standing there, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm mailing the flag back to my mother. He says, you're dreaming. He says, all boxes have to be opened. He said, that's going to go back to the rear. They're going to open it up, and some colonel's going to say, ooh, what a nice souvenir, and on is going to go his name, and off is going to go your mother. Didn't happen. A couple months later, my mother sent me an email and said, your flag arrived. And so I was delighted to hear about that. We then went from the port of Cherbourg down, and we're on the beaches of Normandy, and we've got to bust through. The Germans have surrounded our whole beachhead with the orders to push us back into the ocean. So we had to bust through the lines. And that's called the St. Lo Breakthrough. And the St. Lo Breakthrough, in my opinion, was worse than the invasion. The biggest problem we had one day was when we got dive bombed by our own planes. That was fun. And they dropped the 500-pounders down on us. And one of them went off so close that, honestly, God, you wouldn't believe me, I couldn't hear for a week. People would talk, and I'd look over at them and be, I couldn't hear anything. And finally, it did come back, but I still have some residue from it now. We went on across France. We were the very first troops into Paris. Our tank was sitting in front of Notre Dame Cathedral, and all of a sudden the command car pulled up, and there was a colonel in it, and he said, we got to get out of here. And we said, what are we going to get out for? And he says, well, General Eisenhower told Charles de Gaulle of the Free French that he could take Paris. And so we've already done it, but we got to get out of here so they can do it now. So we got out, they marched down the Champs-Élysées and took Paris. In the meantime, we left there, went on across France, up into Luxembourg, into Belgium. And by that time, it's getting late in the year, and the Germans decided to do a counterattack. And you've all heard the Battle of the Bulge. We got right in the middle of that, and we were actually surrounded for 3 days. But we fought our way out, and a matter of fact, the 4th Division, which I was in, this is the 4th Division here, we got a commendation from Patton because the 4th Division did not back up. Several other divisions did. The Germans broke through, and they broke through quite a bit, but 4th Division did not back up. We crossed the Moselle River into Germany, went on over and crossed the Rhine River at Worms, Germany, and then we went down and you've all heard of Stuttgart, Germany? Probably have heard of it. I think they make Porsches there. And but anyway, we shelled Stuttgart so bad for about 20 days that you couldn't even identify it as a city. But we did win the thing. We got into a town of Prum, and I'll show you my other souvenir, which it's pretty neat. Got down to the town of Prum, and that was the German headquarters for the whole area. And we came in, don't forget now, I'm in Patton's Third Army. General Patton is what running it. He pushes. So we came into one column this way, one column this way, and the other one was straight in. We were in the straight in, got down in front of the German headquarters, and the infantry guys were marching the commanding general out of this building. And the guy that headed the whole thing, and he came out, beautiful uniform in his leather boots and breeches and everything. And he came out with his hands on his head like this, and the infantry guys were trying their best to get his pistol off of him. He had a Luger pistol, and I didn't want that. Well, I would have taken it, but they were busy getting it. So I went up and I whacked him on the chin like that. I got his Iron Cross. That's like the Medal of Honor in Germany. It says 1939 on it with a German swastika, which means he got it when the war first started, when they were blitzkrieging across Poland. That's where he got it. We then went on down, fought our way down to Nuremberg, and the war ended just as we were down the other side of Nuremberg. Now, when we got down there and the war ended, our captain got us all together and said, okay, he was pretty astute, our captain. You know what we called him? We called him the old man. He was 24. And we were 19, so he was the old man. Anyway, he got us all together and he said, okay, now we're coming into the most dangerous part of this war. And we said, what do you mean the dangerous part? It just ended. He said, now I'm going to ask you a quiz question here. Who is the last to know when a war is ended? Anybody want to guess?
Isn't it the soldiers? The soldiers?
The losers. The losers. Whoever loses the war is the last one to know that it ended. And the reason is because our communications and the telephones and radios and everything were all intact. We had blown theirs all up. They were scattered all over the place. So they're not getting word that the war's over. And our captain told us, he said, we're going to lose a lot of guys after the war is over because they'll go into a town thinking the war is over, but they don't know it, so they'll shoot them. So, and it did happen. We lost quite a few. But I don't have much time here, so how much?
Yeah, maybe about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I got to tell you a few things that everybody says that the interesting part. After we landed the invasion, now you got to visualize these things. After we landed the invasion, we got our first shower in 5 weeks. We were so dirty, we stunk. And everybody asked me, wasn't your collar dirty? And I said, no, it wasn't dirty, it had fur on it. And so what they do when they take a shower, they come up with a shower unit and they stick a great big hose into a river, creek, and they got a floater on the end of it so it doesn't go down into the dirt. And they suck the water or the pulp out of the river, goes in through a big heating coil into a pipe that goes from here out about the middle of the cement out there. And there's a spigot about every 5 feet, and you get under a spigot and take your shower. You take all your clothes off, put everything you own in your shoes, and then you go take your shoes along with you, and then they issue you new clothes when you get down the other side, laundered or you new or whatever they are, and you just put them on, get in the truck, and go back to the war. Another thing interesting, you know, when you go into the bathroom right now, you go in there and there's this white thing in there, it's circular and it's got water in the bottom. You know what I mean? Never saw one for 11 months. Never saw one. Everybody says, where do you go to the bathroom? Well, every tank has a little shovel on it about that big. Okay? Food. We saw a kitchen truck they Well, it would depend, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And the rest of the time, we had these boxes, and they were little boxes about so big, and then they were coated with wax on the outside, so if it rained on them or they fell in a puddle or something, they didn't get wet. And then when you opened it up, everything was dry. And that had Spam in it, and some mixture of this, and fruit stuff, and things like that. The only thing that the Army did, which I'm never going to forgive them for, was every ration we got, breakfast ration, lunch ration, dinner ration, every ration we got had 4 cigarettes in it. It was a little pack about that long, that wide, and about that thick, and there's 4 cigarettes in it. And we thought, I guess we're supposed to smoke them. So we smoked our 4 cigarettes, and we smoked them in the afternoon, smoked them in the evening, and the Army made smokers out of everybody by the time the war was over. But I kept on with that about 6 or 8 months, and it's different when you got to buy them yourself. So I quit, and I haven't smoked since. But that is one unforgivable thing that I hope they don't do it now. No, good. They gave us 4 cigarettes every meal. The other thing we did was interesting. We freed one of these slave labor camps. You've seen those that the Nazis had over there. We freed one of those. It had about 20,000 people in it. And unfortunately, they kind of knocked down the fence and let them all out. And some colonel came up again and told us that we had the pleasure of getting them all back in there now. Because when you go up onto a prisoner camp or a slave labor camp, you never let them out. You keep them there and you call the medical corps. And then they come in and then they sort through them to find out who's got this disease or that disease or this problem or that problem. They go through all of them and then let them out slowly that way. The war ended. We got our orders. We were to come back to the United States, re-equip, regroup, proceed to San Francisco, to Okinawa, and we would be the first wave to land in Japan on the seas of Tokyo, on the plains of Tokyo. I never had to go because I was on the train going back to Camp Butner, North Carolina when the war ended. And at that time, later that afternoon, I did something I never did before. I violated an Army rule. We got down to Newark, New Jersey, and the war had ended while we were on the train, and there was 5 of us. We didn't know each other. We just met on the train, and one of the guys said, do you know where the place to be would be for VJ Day, Victory in Japan? Where the place to be? Times Square. And we're 3 miles away. But we're supposed to be at Camp Butner tomorrow morning. So you know what we did? We went to Times Square. We went AWOL, got down to Camp Butner the next day, and all the way down there we thought we were going to really get it. And all they did was they brought all 5 of us in the room, they bawled the heck out of us. It didn't mean anything. They just said, get out of here and go. So I guess we should have stayed 2 days. That's my story. We have a minute.
A couple minutes for questions. If you guys thought of anything that you'd like Mr. Carter to explain more or talk about.
I went back to Normandy. You got 1 minute.
Yeah.
I went back to Normandy on the invitation of a company out of San Antonio, Texas, in 2011. And they were making a documentary down there on Normandy and the invasion and everything. And that night, we went to a big banquet, and this is my gift from the French government.
Oh, wow.
There's Normandy, French flag, American flag, and then the 5 beaches of Normandy up here. And they told us whenever we give a presentation, wear the dang thing. So here it is. Pretty neat, huh? Yeah. You know how many of these there are in the world? 3. Yeah. Just 3 of us went over. And in 2011 from World War II, and the other 2 have passed away. One was from Atlanta, one was from Texas. I guess I'm the only one standing.
Well, this year, Mr. Carter, was the 70th anniversary
Yes.
of D-Day.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going back on the 75th anniversary if I'm
Okay.
still around. I'm 90 years old now, but yeah.
For sure you'll be
I
there.
never would have guessed.
Hmm?
I never would have guessed you're that old.
That young.
Well, I feel good. My mother made 103, so hopefully I got her genes.
Did you go for the Brian Williams special to Normandy? I'm guessing no. But
Help me with that.
She asked if you were in Normandy for a Brian Williams
that was,
special.
I think that was the 70th anniversary. Brian
Was it?
Williams went to Normandy and they had
Oh,
okay.
no.
World War II troops.
So no, you were there in 2010.
2011.
2011.
Yeah, I was there in
It was last year.
1984 also.
Okay.
And when we were there in 2011, John Kerry, the Secretary of State now, he was the speaker. I got to meet him. And how many more minutes do we have?
2.
2. You want to hear something really good? This past summer, I don't even believe this. This past summer, I was invited to go back to Washington to take a tour of the Pentagon. And when I got down there, I told the guy that I was with, I said, you know, I would really like to meet the commanding general of the United States Army. And he says, yeah, would we all? He says, what's the association? I said, I was in the 4th Division in World War II, and he commanded the 4th Division in Iraq and Afghanistan, General Odierno. And what do? They marched me in his office, and I met him, and he coined me. It says, 38th Chief of Staff, United States Army, General Raymond T. Odierno. Do you know how hard it is to get these? Yeah. 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 I've done the honor flight a couple years ago too. That was pretty memorable too. They fly you down to Washington and you see the World War II Memorial and meet various people down there. But the neat part is, after you do it, you go over to, excuse me, over to the Library of Congress, and then you go in there, and they have, it looks like NBC studios in there, and they have it all set up, and you each go in a different compartment, and you have a professional interview and everything. You tell them your story. I did for 2 hours.
Wow.
Thank you very much.